Our next speaker is Adam from Marijuana Anonymous. He's coming in to share his story and his experiences with this pathway. So welcome, Adam.
Thanks so much, LaTanya. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, wanted to make sure. All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Adam, and I'm a marijuana addict.
Hi, Adam.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. And this is a really cool day that y'all put together of having all the different pathways to recovery. So, you know, in my story, there's a lot of different substances, but marijuana was my drug of choice. So that's where I find my home in Marijuana Anonymous. But I'll start at the beginning. You know, I can remember even from an early age having an addictive personality. You know, I didn't use those words, didn't know those words at the time, right? But like, you know, obsessing over things like candy, and lying about things that I didn't need to lie about, but I hated taking accountability, right? So I would always lie to get out of things. And you know, I remember, you know, when getting in trouble, they'd be like, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal if you had just kind of, you know, been honest about things from the get-go. It wouldn't have been that bad, but you lied and you made it so much worse than it had to be. But I didn't care. I wanted to get away with it. And that's like from a young age. The first substance I took, you know, I was I don't know, around 12 or 13 and stole liquor. And so it was started with that. And from the get-go, that first time, I had the whole plan. Like I stole a bunch. I made sure, you know, I had gum to cover my breath afterwards and cologne and all this stuff. And I know all my other friends, you know, they stopped after a while, and I didn't. I kept going because if a little was going to be good, a lot was going to be even better, right? And that's so it started for me with alcohol, but you know, it wasn't until I think I was closer to like 17 or 18 that I first smoked weed, and it was just so much better. It just clicked for me, right? Like I didn't get the hangovers. It wasn't as much work, all that drinking, you know, and like I had to go to the bathroom all the time. I got that feeling that I wanted, which was to check out, to not have all the insecurities in my head. I was good looking enough and cool enough, and I was just enough. And all of the, you know, like, do I fit in? And all those questions, they just washed away when I got high. And I did mix a lot of alcohol and weed, and I went on to do some other substances too, like shrooms and coke and things. But weed was always my love. You know, it quickly got to the point where, you know, as soon as I could, I'd start smoking, and I'd just smoke for the whole rest of the day. And you know, I was smoking school age, right? So it was the end of high school, beginning of college, and I just could not keep my responsibilities. You know, I'd miss papers, I'd miss tests, I'd start dropping classes, I was failing classes, and it was always this huge thing where I'd like, you know, I knew everything was going to hit the fan and it was going to be a mess, and I would just see how far I could keep up the charade until then. And you know, and it got to the point where, you know, I'd get up and run out of the apartment for my friends. You know, if somebody texted me and, you know, you want to get high. I knew I worked a job lifeguarding, and I knew when they dropped off the paychecks, and I was always the first one in line to pick up my paycheck and then go straight to cash it and then to pick up more, right? And it just got to this point of total unmanageability. So I ended up being asked to take time off from school, and the first chance I got, like a few weeks later when I was home and I was alone, I got high, and that's when I got high with my friend, and I had this moment of clarity. I looked over to him and I said, you know, I'm an addict. And he goes, I know, me too. Do you want to stop? And I go, no, we got to smoke more. And it wasn't until about a year after that, when things kind of, when I was trying to get back into school and just couldn't, that I ended up just miserable, and looked up how to get sober from weed. And there was a 12-step meeting that was, I don't know, a 5 or 10 minute walk from where I lived in DC. And I went to my first meeting ever. I was so scared. I think I would have run out of that meeting had I, not been, I had a friend come and he sat on the aisle seat and I was one over. And if he hadn't been sitting there, I probably would have left that meeting at some point. But at the end of the meeting, they asked if anybody needed a sponsor, and I raised my hand, and a few people came up after the meeting, and they introduced themselves, and I got my first sponsor right then and there, and it was awesome. I really I had so many things that I did not want to give up in my life. I didn't want to give up my friends. I didn't want to give up the lifestyle I had of going out and partying all the time and having fun. I just wanted to be to stop hurting and to maybe stop using, but to still basically keep everything else about my life. And that did not work. That did not work. So it was about a year and a half of being in and out and really struggling, before I kind of, I got to this point. I had suicidal thoughts in the past, kind of as a younger teenager, and that came on and off. But I got to this point where I was just so miserable, because I had seen where the solution was. And at that point, I had been to a bunch of MA meetings. I had been to a good number of AA meetings, and some NA as well. And I was 21 at the time, and I was just miserable, just miserable. I was ready to kill myself. I had the bridge picked out that I was going to jump over. And the sad part is I was walking back and forth across that bridge every single day to get high with my smoking buddy. And so, like what always happened with my pattern, things hit the fan again, and I finally asked for help. So I went inpatient for a week and a half, to a dual diagnosis center. So that dealt with the mental health, the depression, and with recovery. And then I went into outpatient, again, dual diagnosis. And I started going to meetings again, and I dropped all of the reasons why I couldn't make this work, because I had finally gotten to the point where what I was trying to do wasn't working anymore. And I was finally willing to just listen and to just give it a try, because I didn't have anything else to lose. I was miserable. I could no longer see how I could keep living the way that I was living. Getting up first thing in the morning and getting high. And then my lungs had gotten to the point where I'd cough so hard after those first bong hits that I'd throw up, and then I'd go get high more, right? And then I'd brush my teeth, right? That's my morning routine. And it was not in the morning, right? I was getting up at 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right? It was not pretty. Everything about my life was unmanageable. So anyway, so I listened, and I took the steps in earnest. I had tried before, but I really took the steps in earnest. MA, for those who don't know, it's very closely based on both AA and Narcotics Anonymous that came before it. But I'm more comfortable with the MA language. There's gender neutral God, not as specific to a different God. I grew up Jewish, so a little bit of the Christian overtones in AA I didn't love as much, and MA is a little more inclusive language, and I liked that. And people are just more friendly and chill. They'll come and give you a hug, and we laugh and we have fun. We're serious about our recovery, but we're also serious about living a life, and I didn't like some of the fire and brimstone talk I sometimes got in some of the old timers elsewhere. Maybe that works for other people. It didn't work for me. I needed to be loved. And that's what I got. and I just kept coming back and kept trying. And I found a group of friends, and I could, be stupid and go to the movies. And, we went and, played laser tag, and all the stuff that I would get high to do, we did sober. And it was really, really weird. But it slowly got more comfortable. I also remember, like, one night I called my sponsor. I had like 2 months sober, and I was like, I'm feeling something. I'm not sure what it is, and it's uncomfortable. And he's like, and we ran through all these negative emotions. Like, are you anxious? Are you angry? Are you resentful? Are you whatever? And I was like, none of these things. And he was like, well, what's going on? And I was like, I don't know. Like, here's what happened today. And he goes, are you excited? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm excited. Like, it had been so long since I had been sober and excited. I didn't even know what that felt like anymore. So like, finding a group of people who can just be there for you. And, a lot of them were early recovery. A lot of them were peers age-wise. And we could just learn how to do things sober. To have that space, especially if you're newer. I highly recommend finding a newcomer meeting and connecting with people on that level. There's a lot of good old timers who are there to support you in those newcomer meetings, and there's lots of people who are going through exactly what you're going through and can understand what it feels like, to freak out about whatever it is, and can just listen. So yeah, as I kept progressing, which it took so much longer than I wanted it to, right? Like any good addict, I wanted to feel good yesterday. And I wanted to be able to, pray about a resentment and have it gone. And that's not the way this thing works, right? It is a slow recovery. I remember people saying, I wish you a slow recovery. And like, I'd want to hit them, right? But I get it, right? Like, this thing takes time. One of the most beautiful memories I have of early recovery is I grew up in New York and had moved back to New York to get sober. And that was rough, being with my parents, and there were a lot of negative things. But anyway, there's a bridge, actually, that's now been demolished and replaced, or whatever. It's over the Hudson River, and it's nearly a mile long. It's a big bridge. It used to be the Tappan Zee. And I was driving west over the bridge during rush hour, and it was bumper to bumper traffic. We were barely moving. And that's the type of thing, like, if I want to check in on my spiritual condition, put me in a traffic jam and see how I react, right? Like, because if I'm not in a good place, I'm going to freak out in bad traffic. And I'm sitting there in bad traffic. I had, 4 months of sobriety or so. And I was facing directly west, and there's Palisades there, right? So the sun is setting over these beautiful Palisades over the river. And I'm just watching the sunset, and I'm happy. And it was so beautiful, I actually cried a little. And I was like, wow, who am I? When have I ever sat in a traffic jam and not cared about the traffic whatsoever and just cried about a beautiful sunset? Like, that was the first, like, vivid memory of gratitude that I have. And I had no idea what gratitude is. I started, if you walk into a 12-step recovery room, regardless of the fellowship, you're going to hear a lot about gratitude. I had no idea what it meant, right? Like, I walked in as an addict with a kindergartner's sense of gratitude. Like, put your hand on a piece of paper at Thanksgiving and make a turkey gratitude, right? Like, that's the type of stuff. Like, I knew how to list friends and family and nice things I had in life, but I didn't get it, right? Like, I got those were things that, like, were nice in my life and that people felt grateful for, but I didn't understand what the feeling gratitude meant. And that's it, right? Like, I thought it was just a feeling. Gratitude is not a feeling. I learned in recovery that gratitude is an action word. And what I mean by that is, like, there's a feeling accompanied with gratitude, but you got to do stuff about it, right? So, like, in that memory of being on the bridge, I thanked my higher power for being able to make that progress and enjoy that sunset, even though I was going crazy. And that's where the action is, right? Like, it can just be a prayer of thanks. But, like, if I'm thankful for friends and family, and I'm grateful for the nice things I have in my life, I need to do things to show that, right? So like I learned that if I'm grateful for family and friends, I need to show up for them, right? I don't need to tell them what to do. I don't need to tell them how to live their life. I don't need to control their behavior. I don't need them to act a certain way for me to feel okay. I just need to show up. And usually it's show up and shut up, right? That's just like be there for them when they need it, right? So like, is it a birthday party? Are they going through a hard time? Are they doing these things? And I just need to be there and be like, hey, I'm here for you. What do you need? And that's it. And then listen, and then do what it is they need to do, you know? So like, I learned that like some of my friends did not want to talk about their problems. They just wanted me to sit on the couch and watch a show with them, or to help them organize a room, or to go out and get dinner and not talk about whatever it was that they were going through. That is a whole new mindset, right? Showing up for people in the way they want to be. They want me to show up for them, not the way that I think they need me to show up. And that's also related to the other big thing I learned, which is like the opposite of gratitude in recovery, which is resentments, right? Like I used to be filled with resentments. They ran my life. I would spend hours obsessing, especially at night, like trying to go to bed, just like thinking about the things that I wanted to say. There's an old Seinfeld episode where Jason Alexander's character, George Costanza, is like obsessing over a conversation that he wished he had like insulted somebody during a meeting about shrimp. And like, that was me. I like would obsess for days about a stupid conversation, right? Yeah. And like, oh my gosh, like I can just put those things down. And I learned to do that is to just turn it over and to keep turning it over and to pray for that person. And I needed to learn what it meant to pray for that person, which is do not ask for that person to be the person you want them to be, or to have, or whatever it is, or act the way you want them to act. It's just pray for them to be happy. Pray for the things that you want. Don't make it specific, like, I hope they get a Jeep Wrangler because I want a Jeep Wrangler. No, like, okay, I want a Jeep Wrangler. I pray for them to have the nice things in life that they want. Okay, that's, I have to make it general. And if I do that every day, I can drop those resentments. Like, and I used to think about some of these resentments and these crappy things I used to do, I had done in the past, and I would physically shudder, right? If you all have seen The Lion King and the hyenas are like Mufasa and they're like, ooh, that was me. Like I would walk down the street and you would just see me like, oh man, I just remembered this crappy thing I did. Like that, I literally would shudder over some of the crap I did. And it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. It was just, I was a resentful addict. That was it. The last piece I'll say, and I talked a lot about praying and gratitude and things. And I walked in here without a real connection to my higher power. And I didn't really get it. And I was at a meeting. This old timer said, if you don't have a God, you can borrow mine until you figure it out. And I was like, okay. And I heard things like, you know, you can make that whatever you want, but make it a loving, supportive, something you can have a connection to, something bigger than yourself. It could be the rooms of recovery. It doesn't matter, just something bigger than yourself that you can rely on. And I really like that. For a while, I used the term higher power, and I got tired of that many syllables, and I just started using the word God. And for me, it is not the same God I grew up with. It is something personal. It is something I connect to. And it's something that I don't really care to define that much anymore. For a while, I obsessed over defining exactly what is my God, and do I need to sort through all these rules? It doesn't matter. I can pray to something and I can feel better. And there are days where I just feel like it is the power, prayer to me is the power of intention. And what I mean by that is, you know, if I pray to work on, like I prayed for a long time to be more honest, to be more accountable, to do all these things. And what I found is that if I'm really putting all that work into prayer, the next time I'm in a situation where I can be honest, when I can be accountable, where I can show up for somebody the way they need me to, I can feel it more. Like I am now aware of that decision. Am I going to lie or am I going to be honest? In a way that if I'm not praying about it, I'm not there. So if you're struggling with a higher power, I highly recommend just pray without any care or worry as to what your definition of God is. It'll still work because you are now making yourself aware of what it is that you're really striving towards. And you can make those decisions when the time comes. And for me, I struggled for a long time. I would be like, oh, the right thing to do is to tell the truth, and I'd still lie. But that's the point, right? Like I had the chance and continue to work towards getting better about those things and owning up for them afterwards and so forth. I really appreciate the Fellowship of MA. I started out going when there was only a couple meetings in the DC area. We've got closer to 10 now, including the suburbs. I got to serve as the first chair ever of the district within the DC area MA. And that was huge. I've gotten to chair meetings and be secretary of meetings, and all that service work helps me be accountable. It helps me to show up, and it helps me to keep my recovery. The service is about me staying connected, and that to me is the biggest thing in recovery. I showed up at 21 and thought my life was over. I didn't want to be friends with all you people. I didn't. I did not. And what I found in the rooms is a group of people who got me, and my best friends mostly are in recovery. I have some really close friends who are also not in recovery, but a lot of them are sober. And the people that I call to really talk through the hard stuff that's going on in my life, those are my sober friends. So yeah, I'm a truly grateful person today, and I get what that means. Yeah, with that, I'll open it up for questions. I guess we can do chat, or you can unmute yourself if you've got that going on.
All right, I have a question. Where are some of the MA meetings locally? Like, where can people go to find MA meetings?
So right now we do have some that are available on Zoom because of COVID. There are Zoom meetings. The one that's normally in Falls Church is still virtual right now. We have a couple that are normally in DuPont Circle. And then we have Bethesda, and we have some further up towards in Baltimore and near Baltimore. I have to pull up, I think it's Towson and one or two others. And there's one in Alexandria.
Is there like
all the meetings, you can find all the meeting information on the Marijuana Anonymous website if you just go to the meeting search page. The most of the days a week. And on the MA website, there's phone meetings and online meetings that are national every day of the week.
Okay. If you can put the links in the chat for that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
The only other question I have is MA totally abstinent pathway, or is it just marijuana?
So we have the same singleness of purpose as alcohol, Alcoholics Anonymous. So the only requirement for membership in MA is a desire to stop smoking weed or stop using marijuana. And that's a desire, right? Like, so we recommend not smoking or using marijuana, but other substances, different people are going to tell have different opinions on that. So I do know some people who have the occasional beer. I know others like myself who do not use any substances at all. But that, the only thing is for like national service position levels, they ask for sobriety from all substances.
Okay.
But that's like a small thing. You can go to MA and do whatever you want to be doing.
How does the medical marijuana, or does it fit into this MA Anonymous marijuana?
They have not published a stance on medical marijuana. So I know some people who are in MA and have some medical conditions and need to do it, they have not published that. There is a thing about medications similar to what AA has published, and so they say, you know, and so they do recognize there's a difference between medications and other use of things. But I found a lot more tolerance in MA, right? So I think that's a big reason why I'm drawn to that as my primary fellowship.
This is there's no so there's no position, like you said, so for prescriptions, or let's say, what do they call it, when you just want to go get CBD, you know, is that's you know, without the psychoactive agent in it, or whatever, THC. Is there no position on that, or just what?
No, they haven't published a position on that. They like AA, they have that preamble that says we're not getting involved in political things, and so they just are silent on that. I you know, and I think it's I know it's a touchy subject. I know it's brought up, but basically, you know, I think they're looking for people to stop getting high, and at least in all the meetings and all the things I've seen locally, it's, you know, stop getting high. You know, I know a lot of people in those rooms who have had to take, you know, have chronic pain, who are on things for, you know, depression and bipolar and other things. And you know, you've got to take the medication you've got to take to be okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Well, good. Thank you. I just asked because I just don't know much about Marijuana Anonymous at all, even though I got 22 years in NA, you know, and AA kind of, but NA really. I just was curious. Thank you.
Yeah, if you've looked at the Narcotics Anonymous literature, MA was founded in the late 80s, to around 1990. So the literature is a lot closer to the NA literature.
Okay.
And is a lot more, you know, contemporary language, accessible. One of my friends has over 40 years in AA, and we read through all the MA literature together, and he goes, yeah, I like this better. Everything. He goes, there was one minor point in the MA book. He goes, I think I like the AA version of this one little thing, but that's the whole book. Right. So, and I kind of feel the same way. It's a lot more accessible. It's a lot more, I don't know. It's yeah, in a lot of ways, it's just an easier to digest version of the same spiritual principles.
I have a quick question. The step work, is it more similar to NA where we have a step working guide, or is it more like AA where you can kind of talk your way through the steps in the beginning, I think, and only have to really write down a 4?
So in MA, you have a basic text, and there's also a workbook available. However, in MA, I found that some sponsors suggest the workbook, and others say, you know, you can use the workbook
I
if you
was
want.
putting it out for you because it is a break.
Latanya, you're muted.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so there is a workbook. You can use it. I've used it with some sponsees who prefer to kind of take down some notes, but most of the people I know don't require it as a thing. I think it's helpful to kind of, you know, to kind of use as a like talking points, but you don't have. It's not. I've been to a number of NA meetings and have some good friends in NA, and it's like you do the workbook, period, right? It's not like that in NA, but it's there. It's a nice tool to use if that can be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions for Adam?
Do you find that people that use marijuana, I mean, I know you're going to the meetings, MA meetings, that they really reach a bottom, you know, in using just the marijuana? And do you find that is more prevalent now in this, you know, 2020 versus 1991? It was so hard to get people to relate to marijuana as an addiction so many years. So what do you think was a turnaround for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So most of the people I know who kind of got sober older, it's a slower decline, right? Like, and that's part of the tricky thing with marijuana, right? Like for a while, it wasn't as powerful, and it just took people years. I know somebody who smoked for like 30 plus years before they hit their bottom. I think now you're getting people who are hitting it faster because, one, it's a lot more powerful. It's not at all the same as it used to be. And two, you get a lot more people who, like myself, were mixing marijuana with a bunch of other stuff, and just marijuana was their drug of choice. I also find a lot of people have dual diagnosis, right? So they've got depression, they've got bipolar, they've got other stuff that, you know, you throw a whole lot of weed on top of that, and, you know, if you were like me, you get depressed really hard and hit that bottom faster. So, yeah, I think it's a mix of those things. But yeah, marijuana is one of those, like, it can be a slow burn. If you've got nothing else going on, you just kind of shut into yourself, you know, and you're just not living a life. So it can take a while.
All right, let's thank Adam for a great presentation on MA.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks,
you
everyone.
so much.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, man. Great story too. Thank you, man.